I'm Eric Barnes with the Daily Memphian, and welcome to the Sidebar, a weekly show on the community, arts, culture, and more. Today we're talking about the startup ecosystem here in Memphis with Anthony Young of Epicenter. So stay with us for a conversation with Anthony, and a special thanks to our sponsor, Youth Villages. Anthony, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
We are here in the crosstown up on the 10th floor in the atrium. We've had a little bit of a little tour of crosstown, trying to find a place where we could record today. But
the music has been great, by the way. Great music.
The music has been great. Yes, I know. We're not complaining about the music. It's just sometimes hard to yell your way through a podcast. But thank you for being here. You are, as of October, CEO of Epicenter.
Yes.
You were the interim as of in the summer. Let's just do real quick what Epicenter is, then we'll go deeper on lots of programs. But you're stuck in an elevator, you got 30 seconds.
Yeah.
What's the pitch?
Yeah, so Epicenter is the innovation hub of the Memphis region. Essentially what that means is we exist to provide entrepreneurs with the resources that they need to build, grow, and scale their companies right here. It also means that we're the catalyst of inclusive innovation. And so it's important for us that the innovators that we are providing here also reflect Memphis.
Yeah. So we'll dig deeper, but like what makes, just generally in your mind, what makes a really good entrepreneur? Or is that even the right question to ask?
No, I think it's the right question to ask, right? I think at its core, entrepreneurship solves a problem, right? And so what makes a really good entrepreneur, I think, is someone who's identified a problem that they're trying to solve. They have an idea of a customer that they can sell that product or service to. And then along the way, they get access to resources. And that's where Epicenter and other organizations come into play. Is to provide them with the resources that they need to stand that business up. And
when you look at, is it sometimes you think of the entrepreneur as the single person, the Elon Musk, the Fred Smith, this one person, but that maybe is almost a little bit simplification, right? Because often it's partners, it's a team, it's all these people. So how do you sort of work through that where our idealized notion of the single entrepreneur versus the reality of building a scalable business with lots of people and team members and so on and so forth?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I do want to highlight Epicenter's director of programs is Nate Smith, right? And oftentimes when I speak with people about startups, they think our founders look like Nate.
Yeah.
Right? And sometimes they do, but oftentimes they don't, right?
Yeah.
About 60% of our portfolio is Black or brown or women-founded companies. And so our entrepreneurs here in Memphis look different than maybe anywhere else in the country. That said, typically there are teams involved and they've got great advisory support. They've got great board members and they've got great teammates as well.
And do you get people who come to Epicenter with a fully cooked idea? I mean, this starts getting into the programming, right? I mean, maybe some people think, well, if I don't have a fully cooked idea, I shouldn't even look into this, or I only have some notion of an idea. Or are you looking at second stage, businesses that have already launched looking to raise more money or a third round of money? I mean, where do you fit in the startup, which is kind of a broad term really, but startup businesses?
No, I think it's a great question. So we typically work with businesses from a variety of stages, from ideation stage to growth stage. And so some of our flagship programming, such as 0 to 510, we're likely to see more seasoned founders there. They've got great ideas, but they're looking to be a part of, again, a nationally ranked accelerator. We've got programs like the Kaufman Fast Track, really early stage companies, early stage ideas there. But then we have programming such as our Capital Readiness Accelerator, which really gets entrepreneurs ready to pursue venture capital from their perspective. Even programs like our Sales for Success, which prepares our entrepreneurs to go out and really get that first customer, right? So I would say that our programming really supports entrepreneurs at various stages of their life cycle.
Wait, we've read about, you said 0 to 510.
Yes.
What does that mean? Actually, this is embarrassing, but I'm going to go ahead and put it out there that I can't remember what that stands for, what that reference is.
Yeah, so listen,
I think I know what the 0 is, but I don't know what the 510 is.
Yeah, so it's essentially their journey to their 510K federal clearance, right?
Okay.
And so the 0 to 510 program actually precedes Epicenter.
Okay.
It's been our flagship programming for a number of years. 75% of the participants from that program have been underrepresented founders. And in fact, we've helped those founders now get access to $2 million in funding, right? So it's a great program, nationally ranked, and very proud of it.
And we're, again, I'll remind everyone we're here with Anthony Young. He's CEO of Epicenter as of this October. We'll talk more about Anthony's background and various things he's done. But another thing you just mentioned was sales. And I do think that's an interesting one where people who have a great idea and think the great idea sells itself, right? And that's not always the case. If you're lucky or you're really, really smart or you just hit the right niche, yeah, it may just be the thing that's you can build it and they will come. But often that's not the case, right?
No, I think you're exactly right. And so what our programming aims to do is identify a problem first and then match that problem with innovation. So we run a program that's rooted in what we call the Opportunity Challenge. We had one for logistics, and I'll talk a little bit about what that is. So the Opportunity Challenge is when we bring in industry experts. Let's take logistics, for example, here. We spend a couple of days with those experts really identifying what their challenges are. It's the design thinking, the reverse pitch model. And again, we spend a couple of days identifying really what those hurdles are. We synthesize that, and we take those problems and we hand those problems off to innovators. And so now they spend 6 to 8 weeks really solving for innovations for a specific problem or a specific customer. We then allow that cohort to pitch their ideas or pitch their innovations in front of that same group of experts. And what we hope happens is a couple of things. One, we hope that this leads to their first paying customer, right? So this is their first paid pilot opportunity. But two, we hope that these innovations help boost Memphis industry, right? That they're able to better compete regionally, nationally, internationally because of the boost in innovation.
How long has Epicenter been around now? I've lost track of time.
Yeah. So
8 years, 10 years? Is it that long?
Yeah. So Epicenter was founded out of a moon mission from the Chamber of Commerce.
That's right.
Yeah, yes. And so it spent some time there. It spent some time incubating in BioWorks in 2017.
It was at BioWorks. That's
it was
right.
at BioWorks for a while. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Obviously, all this precedes me, right?
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, so in 2017, a lot of people remember Epicenter from being at 902 Cooper.
Yes.
There in Cooper Young. And so we were there from 2017 until just after COVID.
Yeah.
We moved in 2020-ish.
Yeah.
So when other people were not looking for real estate, Epicenter was, right? So yeah, we were in this amazing building downtown at 150 Peabody.
Yeah.
We've got 20,000 square feet of just really of innovation happening there.
Yeah. And Leslie Lynn Smith was that we were talking about this before we started.
Yes.
Friend, I got to know her through Epicenter. I was actually, full disclosure, I was in Chairman Circle back with the old Daily News when this stuff was starting.
Yeah.
I'm putting all the connections back together. And Leslie Lynn Smith was one of the founding board members of Daily Memphian and just a great human being.
Oh, my goodness. Leslie is a dear friend of mine. I get the privilege to speak with Leslie a couple times a month now. She's doing fantastic. She's in Chicago doing great work, and looking forward to her visiting again here in Memphis.
We'll be back here with Anthony Young of Epicenter here in just a second. I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping and remind everyone, I'm Eric Barnes, and this is the Sidebar. It airs on WYXR 91.7 every Thursday at 11:30, focused on the community, arts, culture, everything in between. It's not just a radio show, though. It's one of many weekly podcasts we do at the Daily Memphian, including the Memphis Grizzlies podcast, hosted by Drew Hill and Chris Harrington, our food podcast, Soundbites, hosted by Jennifer Chandler, and also sometimes Holly Whitfield is able to step in and host. That also airs here on WYXR every Thursday at 11. We also host the podcast version of Behind the Headlines, a TV show that we do over at WKNO every week. And all of our podcasts are on the Daily Memphian site, as well as iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get this show and Soundbites on WYXR.org or the WYXR app. That includes all the WYXR shows, the talk shows, music shows, archives of all of that. If you're not a supporter of WYXR, it is nonprofit, listener-supported radio. So you can become a member and get all kinds of benefits. You can do a one-off donation. That is what makes WYXR work. And if you're not a paid subscriber to the Daily Memphian, we hope you'll become one. We are also a 501c3, very much supported by our paid subscriptions, the largest newsroom in the region. And also, because we're a 501c3, We raised a certain amount of our money. We talked about that last week with Sarah Leach, our head of fundraising, and just talked about the general state of local news. So if you're really wonky and into the Daily Memphian, you can go back in the archives I talked about and listen to that conversation I had with Sarah. But we raise about 15 to 20% of our budget every year through donations. And so we've got a year-end campaign going on at Daily Memphian, and we'll hope you will consider donating. I mentioned Sarah Leach was on from our office talking about local news and the campaign and just generally what's going on with local news. We also recently had George Abbott talking about the Civic Commons. We had Jeff Hewlett, a musician, talking about all things Memphis music and his new album. Also mentioned Behind the Headlines, and we recently had Paul Young, Mayor of Memphis, on, talked about, I don't know, there's nothing really going on that we could talk to Paul about, but we managed to find a few things to talk to him about, some of which is probably even making news this week. And this week on Behind the Headlines, we've got Steve Mulroy, the Shelby County District Attorney, talking about all kinds of stuff, bail reform, legislative actions, the political pressure he's under. It was a really great conversation. I appreciate Steve Mulroy coming on to talk about all that. And recently on Behind the Headlines, we had the interim CEO of MATA, Bakara Malden, who is again in the news as we record this, and other shows that you can get either as podcast or video on the Daily Memphian or at YouTube. Last but not least, we recently did our last business seminar of the year. That was our commercial real estate year in review. But we had Rick Shadyac, CEO of ALSAC, there right days before he announced that he's moving into a different role. Rick was great. I thought he'd be great, but he was really good talking about Memphis, talking about the development they've got going on. You can get that video online at, go to Daily Memphian, search for commercial real estate, or go to YouTube, find the Daily Memphian channel, and you'll get all that video. There's also an industry overview of all things going on in development in Memphis. But we are here with Anthony Young of Epicenter. How much, startups fail, right? And there's no shame in that, right? And I, lots of very successful people have started businesses that failed. How do you talk to, nobody wants that to happen, right? But how do you talk to people going through your programs, people thinking about an idea? How is that part of the communication and the reality of there's a pretty high percentage of startups just don't make it, and there's no shame in that?
Yeah, that's a part of all of our programming, right? We have very real and transparent conversations with our entrepreneurs in every program that we have, from our Kaufman Fast Track to Capital Readiness, even programs like 0 to 510. And in fact, I think I mentioned at 0 to 510, those companies had raised $2 million. That's a different stat, right? They've actually raised $65 million.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
over the life cycle. In our previous Capital Readiness programming, those graduates have raised $2 million. That said, in each program that we have, we talk about, what's possible. We talk about market validation, and we talk about the realities that this may or may not be the best fit. However, what our goal is to align them with the resources that they need to grow and to scale. And so that's connections to capital, connections to customers.
Is the other part of it too, people talk about fail fast, right? Like you're going down this road, you're doing something, do it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't mean the whole business fails, but this initiative, this sales pitch, and we've tried to do this somewhat successful in various ways at Daily Memphian, because I don't know if we're still a startup 6 years in, but we were a startup 6 years ago, that certain things we did were just the dumbest things I've ever thought of. Just so stupid. Mostly it was Andy Cates' fault, my board chair and friend. But some of the dumb ideas were mine also. And it is, you sort of have to embrace that, right? Yeah. You have to be willing and have trust. And one of the things I like truly about working with Andy, because I joke, is we would both make really dumb decisions and then be okay with each other and with it. And you've got to then turn around and say, why was that dumb?
Yeah.
What led us to that decision? What can we learn from it? There's a couple of little things that worked in that initiative or things, and so that mindset in terms of instilling that in people who go through your programs, or do they already have it because they're already there and they're coming to you?
I think it's a great question. Grit and grind isn't just on the basketball court, right? Our entrepreneurs have as much grit and as much grind as any innovators in the country, right? They have to, right? And so if there is a city in which you're going to just breed these really tough entrepreneurs, is right here in Memphis, right? A couple of reasons for that. Memphis has essentially 2 venture capital firms. Peer cities such as Birmingham has 6, Nashville has 11, Tulsa has 11. And so the resources, we're still trying to build those, right? We're still trying to attract those resources. And so entrepreneurs from here have to have a bit of a resilience to survive because of lack of resources.
Let's bounce around. Oh, I know what I wanted to ask though, actually. And I mentioned Elon Musk without getting into all things Elon, which lots of other people talk about. XAI, huge investment. I mean, a level that we just haven't seen in a long, long time, especially at the speed at which this money is being put into this supercomputer. And now talk of other, big, not necessarily startups, but big businesses coming here. Does that have a radiant positive effect on the kinds of things you're doing? Or does it have a direct effect, a positive effect on the things you're doing?
Yeah.
I'm curious.
Yeah, so I've said this a couple of times before. I view this as I view those as more than just developments. To me, they're signals, right? They're signals that the innovative economy is not coming to Memphis. The innovative economy is here, right? So just down the street, Ford is building Blue Oval City. They're building electronic vehicles there. We've got the world's largest supercomputer here. So I think it's a signal to the world that Memphis is at the forefront of the innovative economy, that we're ready to play. But I think it's also a signal that we need to prepare. We need to prepare our workforce for the type of jobs that are going to be available. We need to prepare our students with STEM education. And for us at Epicenter, we got to do a better job of preparing our entrepreneurs to be able to provide pilot opportunities for those companies as they come in.
You mentioned earlier, I think you all have a specific program around logistics. Is that right?
We do.
Yeah. And logistics, is not the maybe the poster child for, startup and innovation, but it's, as the COVID and the pandemic and all that sort of highlighted that people who never maybe even heard the word logistics or thought about logistics suddenly were seeing in the news, reading about it because it was making it, difficult to get all kinds of things that they were used to getting very easily at the grocery store, the department store, or online. Talk about that focus on logistics. It's obviously, I assume, tapping into the fact that Memphis is such a huge logistics hub. It's not necessarily you're trying to launch the next FedEx, but there's all these other parts and pieces that feed the complex of logistics. I assume that you're trying to help entrepreneurs find ways into all those niches and opportunities.
Yeah. Again, another great question. So, I mentioned earlier where there may be a gap in access to capital for entrepreneurs. There's not a gap in access to customers. There are 3,600 supply chain companies that are headquartered in Memphis. So where we may not be able to attract and retain innovators from a capital perspective, we can from a customer perspective. And logistics helps to drive that for us. And so if you look at the Mass Economics report, some of our key industry clusters here in the region, you're talking about logistics, medical device, ag, advanced manufacturing, and more. Logistics for us has been somewhat of an anchor. And we ran a logistics opportunity challenge, I guess, a couple of months ago. And in that challenge, we had 72 companies apply to be a part of it.
Wow.
Not just from the region, but from across the country. And in fact, there were 4 companies that applied internationally, right? We selected 15 of those companies, brought them here to Memphis, and had them try and solve for some of our logistics issues. I'm happy to say that out of those 15, we've got about 4 that are actively looking to relocate either a sales and service office or headquarters to Memphis. But we got some pilot opportunities out of that, right? And so we're proving market validation with that. And so for us, again, logistics has been a really key industry for us. And a lot of our innovation is driven by logistics.
And when you say pilot opportunity, my brain immediately goes to pilot tax incentives. That's not what you're saying. You're saying pilot programs that, define that a little more, just for those people who are suddenly triggered into property tax incentives.
I got you. Yeah, essentially a proof of concept contract, right? That a short stage contract that allows them to prove that this thing works.
I mentioned the XAI thing, and AI, it's sort of this joke that you can't see a billboard, you can't see an earnings report, you can't see anything that doesn't include AI. I mean, how much does the explosion of AI and AI tools and people trying to utilize AI in smart ways in their companies and so on, how much is that now a part of when people are coming to you saying, hey, I've got this great idea, how much AI is involved or not involved?
Yeah, so for us, we've seen it kind of broaden the lane in which people can play. And so we're seeing entrepreneurs and innovators who may or may not have had an opportunity beforehand, be able to leverage AI to put together some really interesting ideas and really interesting plans. And so I think AI for now definitely levels a playing field and provides more avenues for maybe underserved individuals to play in the space.
So just in the way that it'll help you generate marketing campaigns, or it can handle customers. I mean, some of those, is it those sorts of things that
it's those sorts of things, but AI can also help design a strategic plan, right?
Yeah.
So there are a number of things that they can do.
Yeah. I mean, I know like my son's a coder and he's like, look, I have that stuff open all day.
Yeah.
It's just running through my code. I know our folks who do tech at Daily Memphians, the same thing. Some of it though, and I don't know, this is an unfair question, but maybe this is more a rant on my part. I do still find some of it, like, many of us have been using AI for a long time.
Yeah.
It's called spell check. I mean, like now I understand that's not Grok and the world's largest supercomputer, but there's a certain amount of it that I do find myself being a little bit cynical about, that's been around.
Yeah.
But obviously there's also these great new things. And I guess discerning between the things that are spin that we've done forever, that are computer-assisted work that we've done, and then these new, really powerful tools. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm trying. Maybe I'm putting you in a bad place, but
No.
I find there's a part of me that's a little cynical about it.
Listen, my timeline is full of cynicism about technology, right? And look, I understand both sides of it, right?
Yeah.
If I'm trying to get my mom to help, my stepfather is a pastor, and so I'm trying to get my mom to help him use ChatGPT to write sermons. It's a challenge, right? It is.
I love that. That is actually, man. That is great.
But listen, I think at its core, we've got to be intentional to ensure that technology is something that happens through us, not happens to us. And we've got to get in the front of the line with that, right? So that we stay ahead, which is why it's important for us to work with folks like Code Crew.
Yeah.
We're excited about the partnership we've got with them on a program called Innovate Accelerate, which I'm sure will come out here pretty soon. But essentially, that's us starting the pipeline over and intentionally bringing in underserved, Black and brown innovators into the space. As they graduate from coding with Code Crew, learn how to code, we want them to reimagine what does creating and developing look like too.
I was just emailing with Mecca today.
Yep.
Code Crew is amazing in the work they do. I mentioned my son's a programmer, and whenever people bring up Code Crew, I was talking to my son when he'd graduated. I think he went to 4 years of college at USC out in LA, and he was listening to me talk about Code Crew and goes, basically, I mean, I could do a 90-day program and pretty much learn everything I learned at USC. And I said, please never tell me that again. Please never say those words again, because the bills are paid.
Bills are coming. Yeah, I get it.
He goes, no, I don't mean that. I just mean, and I was like, let's just change the subject.
Yeah.
But it is amazing, actually, that there is, and my son talks about it all the time. I mean, there was a lot of benefit to him doing a 4-year program, but he said, the core stuff, that between that and AI assistance, you can get to coding real quickly in a way that you couldn't many years ago.
Yeah, and I think the more options people have, the better off we're going to be, right?
Yeah.
The option to go to the Code Crew, learn what you need to learn in 90 days, but also the option to go to college. I think the more options we have, the better off we'll be.
Yeah. Again, we're here with Anthony Young of Epicenter, CEO as of this October, was interim CEO before that. How did you end up in this space? You were in more traditional banking, and then you got closer and closer to this entrepreneurial space over the course of your career, it looks like. How and why?
It's an interesting story, man, and I give most of the credit to my wife, honestly. So I was a banker for a number of years, did a lot of great work, had a good time there. But my wife would always push me to find out, what's next, right? What are you doing? How are you reaching your calling? And so I hadn't thought about it before, but the more that she kind of peppered me with those questions, I spent some time thinking about what I wanted to accomplish, right? And I had a lot of really good work into the community. And I wanted to align my talent of deploying capital with my passion for community. And so I went and I Googled, is there such thing as a nonprofit bank, right? Credit unions popped up, but also this thing called CDFIs emerged, right? And I began to read about the CDFI industry, and that really spoke to my
Community development,
financial institutions. Exactly right.
I got 3 out of 4. That was good.
Yeah.
That was good.
So these institutions are essentially charged with deploying capital and credit in the underserved areas, underserved markets. And so I got a chance to work with Eric Robertson.
Yeah, we were talking about Eric earlier.
Yeah. At my term at River City Capital. So I ran River City Capital for a while and had a chance to come to Epicenter. And my role at Epicenter initially was the Director of Capital Program. So it was, particularly when we were working with small businesses, it was aligning our small businesses with access to traditional debt capital, such as CDFIs, credit unions, banks, but also our innovative entrepreneurs, aligning them with access to the venture capital, angel capital. And so as Epicenter really transitions and switches over to focusing exclusively on innovative companies, that's kind of the lane that we're in now. But my time as a banker, I think, greatly informs the work that we do now. There I was essentially managing risk and managing margin. This work has allowed me to understand the importance of managing impact and managing mission, right? And so I'm looking forward to putting those two things together.
When we talked a little bit before we start recording, you said Epicenter going more to innovation.
Yeah.
Elaborate on that. What is that? Is from what to what?
Sure. So, we talked earlier, right? Epicenter was born out of a moon mission from the chamber many years ago to really drive innovative entrepreneurship. In fact, the EPI in Epicenter initially was Entrepreneurial Powered Innovation Center, right? And so along the way, we saw a need to support small businesses. Did great work there and very proud of the work that we did. We supported over 1,700 small businesses. We've deployed over $1 million in grant funding to small businesses. Out of that portfolio, probably 75% is Black and brown founders. But as we kind of surveyed the landscape in 2023, I think the board decided that the highest and best use for Epicenter now is to go back to its origin, which is supporting innovative companies. So when we talk about innovative businesses, innovative founders, we're talking about companies that are creating products or services that are new to the world in innovation, new to the world in technology, new to the world in process or business model. So your high tech, high science entrepreneurship is what we focus on now.
Yeah. People can learn much more about all your programs. Just Google Epicenter Memphis, and they can learn more about the various programs and getting involved if they got an idea and they want to sort of try to get into an accelerator. All that stuff is on the website, I assume.
Also on the website, we've got great programs coming up soon. We just had our demo day from 0 to 510, which was fantastic. Had nearly 200 people to show up to hear some really innovative companies pitch. We've got our Kaufman Fast Track program coming up in January. We're going to have our
Kaufman Fast Track program, since that's the closest one. Define that one a little bit better.
Yeah. So Kaufman Fast Track is a program that takes you from idea stage to kind of business planning for your company. So that's coming up, starts in January, followed up by capital readiness, and we just got a number of programs coming up. In October, we're going to host our first regional innovation conference that we're excited about. And on a quarterly basis, you'll see Epicenter combining the culture of Memphis, such as food and music, with innovation, right? And we'll be having entrepreneurs pitch, intertwined with music and food and things of that nature.
Okay. We're about out of time, though. I always try to end by asking people what the first concert they went to was.
Wow, that's a great question. I think the very first concert that I went to was probably a Bobby Rush concert. I'm from Mississippi, man. So,
nice.
We would have these little blues shows.
Yeah.
So I probably went to a Bobby Rush concert when I was probably 19 or so.
Yeah, where were that? Do you remember where that was?
That was probably in Stello, Mississippi, just outside of Philadelphia, not too far from my hometown.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's a good one. I don't think we've had a Bobby Rush. That's great.
Yeah. Long time ago, man.
Yeah. Anthony Young of Epicenter, thanks very much for being here. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for having me.
That is all the time we have this week. If you missed any of the show, you can get the full episode at wyrxr.org, or you can go to the Daily Memphian, or you can go to wherever you get your podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube. Thanks very much, and we'll see you next week.